We did a 4-year refit on this boat, and the refit is not quite done yet. However, we're out sailing. We've finally gotten to test some of the decisions that we made, and we're going to fill you in on how those decisions are measuring up now that we're actually facing the consequences out on the water.
So after getting the boat, we pretty much gutted it completely. We replaced beams, replaced decks, bulwarks. The entire cockpit is a fresh build. At the bow section, we needed to replace the king plank and do changes there. Then we built everything back up after also checking our hull insulation. So basically most of the interior got stripped out to dry and do repairs to the balsa insulation. But then we fiberglassed over that and started again with rebuilding the interior. And after that came the moment of a new engine, new systems, but there is still things that we haven't gotten to, but yet it was very alluring and exciting to get to splash the boat and get to know it and test it, and that's what we did. And some things that we haven't gotten to were renewing the standing rigging, installing a heater. The electrical system was a very bare bones improvised version, so yeah, those things are on the list for later.
So in this video, we're going to go through all of the choices that we made, system by system, review how they worked, what didn't work, and what's on the roster for what we hope is sort of the final big refit this winter before we start sailing more full-time.
It's a sailboat, so I think first let's have a look at the rig and the sails. We do have the original sails, so I think with a few minor adjustments though, things can be made more pleasant. We had one instance, for example, where the wind was piping up from 15 and above, and this boat can certainly take a lot more than that. But we decided to take the sails down again and turn around. The reason for that was that this boat requires running backstays. Now, running backstays, they hold the mast back. This is a very sturdy mast, so you don't have to have them up all the time. With lighter wind conditions, you can go without them, but I don't know where the threshold is, and since it was pretty windy and there was a bit of a chop, I decided not to risk it. So that's one detail, for example. We still have to get running backstays. Another thing is, since there is only one winch here, maybe one day upgrade it to self-tailing. That is just a nice detail, because then you need less hands to do all the work. One thing that I definitely want to add is rope clutches, so that you can lock off each halyard once it's tensioned, so that you can remove it from the winch again and then have the winch free for a different task. To sail well, you want to have adequate tension in all your sails. And then it kind of continues along this way. The boom vang is very improvised. I don't have a bail yet where it's attached to the boom, so we have to rethink this. I don't necessarily want a rigid boom vang. Yeah, just a little more hardware here. Another thing is reefing. We don't even have reef lines right now, so we just reefed once, and that was by putting in a reef before even raising the sail. So there's just a lot of hardware missing. I have to wrap my head around what kind of reefing do we want to go with, and things like that. One thing that I was super happy with is how easy the mainsail goes up. Now on Magic Carpet 1, it's a tiny boat, it's a tiny mainsail, and yet it was frustratingly hard to get the mainsail up. So I was very pleasantly surprised to see that on this mast, the mainsail goes up super easy. But there's a little caveat to that. If we get new sails, I personally love having full battens in the sail, and that's what adds a lot of friction. Those battens drive into the mast at 90 degrees. We might still have to decide whether we want to add a track or not. That can reduce a lot of friction, and that can make it very easy. Another consideration for an offshore boat is that you want to reef or you want to hoist the main in many different conditions, and not having to point into the wind to do that is a pretty important safety feature. So right now I was positively surprised that the main goes up, but like I said, if we add battens, if we want to reef off the wind, then maybe it doesn't work that well. So maybe a track still needs to be added.
So the sails we used this summer came with the boat, and we did get new roller furlers for the boat, which we filmed. That was working with Paul from Ocean Rigging and Hydraulics. That was, a little while ago now, but our old sails are built for Hank-on forestays, so we weren't actually able to install the roller furlers yet. So a big thing this winter is getting new sails that will work with our new roller furlers and updating all of the standing rigging, which is also pretty old at this point.
Now we got to sail the boat a bit, and it sails beautifully. We only had light winds, but the little glimpses that we did get, I really enjoyed. Her motion, comfort, speed, pointing ability. The boat tracks incredibly well given her long full keel, so I just like the very pleasant motion where you can let go of the tiller, go for a little walk, come back, and the boat is still just like on train tracks, and it's moving in that same direction. So it's not a squirrely boat. I've been on very lightweight race boats, and you let go of the tiller and the boat is pointing in the wind instantly. Which for a race, that's more what you want. But for a cruising boat, it is very pleasant to not have to be so hands-on all the time and instead have the boat take care of you, so to speak. I really like cutter rig, having the two head sails. It's not just beautiful to look at, but also pretty functional. So there are still many things on the list to do, but it was a really good glimpse.
Okay, now moving on, let's talk about the front of the boat. Aladino actually completely rebuilt the bowsprit. He removed a large rotten section of wood and then gave everything a beautiful new coat of varnish, reinstalled everything. Not all new hardware, but all new fasteners. We got a new bobstay. So that all worked really well. No complaints, no sign of weakness there. It worked beautifully. So let's talk a bit now about our anchor, our chain, and our windlass. We finally entered the world of modern anchors, and it is a good world to be in. It's a 25 kilogram Vulcan anchor from Rockna, and we have been so impressed by it. We have heard really good things about modern anchors and how reliable they are, and we've definitely found that to be the case. We have not dragged an inch. We have been really, really well set. I've felt safer at anchor on this boat with this setup than I ever have before. On Magic Carpet, we had an older knockoff CQR, and we did drag with that. Of course, it depended on the bottom, and of course, it depended on the conditions. With this anchor, we've just felt really secure. The chain obviously makes a really huge difference with it as well. We've got really heavy chain and a lot of it. 400 feet of, what is the thickness of the chain?
3/8.
3/8 chain. And we chose that size of chain just because that's the size of chain that our windlass accepts. So we didn't necessarily make that choice ourselves, but we're really happy with it. It's super heavy, and we feel very safe. The windlass, love-hate relationship. Oh. So on Magic Carpet 1, we had an electric windlass. It brought the chain and anchor up so quickly and so easily at the push of a button. This one requires quite a bit of work. So we measured it took about 4 minutes to bring up 15 meters of chain, which isn't too bad, but around here the water is really deep. So we would usually anchor with a minimum of 45 meters of chain. And so that means if you go without brakes, it's 12 minutes to pull up your chain.
And exhausting at that, it's not just a number.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, it's like 12 minutes of really hard work. 12 minutes is actually quite a lot of time. Although I didn't mind the exercise, it did change how we thought about anchoring. it's a good thing we have such a reliable anchor, because very often on Magic Carpet 1, if we set the anchor and we weren't that happy with it, we'd bring it up and we would reset it again until we were very happy with it. With this, it's so much effort and it takes so long that we're a little hesitant to really reset things if we ever felt like, oh, this anchor ground isn't quite right or whatever. So I think an electric windlass might be in our future. I would be happy with a manual windlass if it was faster, but I don't know if we can necessarily get a faster one because there's a lot of gearing and stuff involved. So that's my review of the windlass. I don't hate it, but it definitely has some drawbacks.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I feel the same.
Yeah.
It works all right, but could be better.
I really cannot say enough good things about the anchor and chain. Some of you may remember we showed it in an episode. We went to go pick up our Rockna Vulcan anchor from CMP Group, which is, they have a warehouse here, but they have warehouses all over North America and Europe. And so not only are we really happy with the anchor, but it was just really nice to have that sort of local in-person interaction and know that there's a team behind what they're doing. So we're very grateful to CMP Group. They did donate this anchor to us, which is neat because it was top of our list of anchors to buy. So we're very grateful that it was actually donated to us. So thank you so much. All right, the dinghy. We went in a very different direction with the dinghy on this boat than we did on our previous boat as well. We're sort of just trying new things. So the old boat, we had a typical inflatable with an outboard on it. That worked well, but the really big problem was that when you wanted to go to a beach on your own, you just couldn't drag the outboard up the beach on your own. So we wanted something lighter, something a bit more maneuverable. We didn't like always having to take the heavy outboard on and off the back of the dinghy.
Requires gas. It's again a different liquid to carry around.
Totally.
It's kind of explosive.
So we just thought, let's try it, and then we'll sort of have a better understanding of the full spectrum of dinghies. Aladino built this beauty. It rose really well. It rose so fast. And I think that has been really great because sometimes you just want to get somewhere, right? I really liked the exercise. It's a beautiful dinghy, so having it in the videos, I mean, that is a consideration for us, has just been such a delight. And of course, there are, some downsides. It is large for a dinghy, but even though it's large, it really only takes 2 people comfortably. We've put 3 people in there, but it's not great. So it's not the end of the world because 95% of the time it's just Aladino and I needing to get somewhere, and for 2 people it's perfect.
An added fun bonus is that we have a rig for it and sails.
Yeah, and that's like a joyous thing. We haven't used it for any practical purposes, but it's a fun activity for sure.
Totally.
It's been really easy to get it on and off the boat using the spinnaker pole setup that we have. That has worked really well. I'm keen to do this for another season. I think especially here in these waters, it's been lovely. I would maybe reconsider once we leave the coast of BC, if we want something that we can, slam through surf and just not care about as much. Because the thing is like we do care about this dinghy. Mm-hmm. And that's been okay here. But I think there might be some places that abuse dinghies a little more.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, things can always be refiberglassed and repainted if you get the use you need out of it. I also wanted to jump in quickly and say something about dinghy stowage because we've gotten lots of comments from folks concerned about this. The main concern is your dinghy is stored right side up. What do you do in bad weather? And we have a simple answer to that. We will turn it upside down. But when it's really good weather, it's a lot easier to stow it right side up because we found that we took it on deck every single night, put it back in the water every morning, and it's just really simple to lift, lower, without having to do a flipping maneuver. A couple of things moving into the cockpit. The Dodger, it was good to have. It's a little dodgy. But it is a little dodgy indeed. Yeah, it's the original one, but as you can see, it's on its way out. Then there is, of course, some maintenance things like the turtle hatch, fresh water goes in it, the cracks open, not ideal, so I'll have to seal that up, and just many little touches like that. Things that are still improvised, obviously the traveler or the lack thereof. So our main sheet has just been tied onto a piece of Dyneema. Having some kind of traveler would be nice, of course. So we'll see what we can come up with. Another thing is an autopilot. Start off with a tiller pilot, but for when we head offshore, then the wind vane will take priority for sure.
The cockpit coaming redesign has been wonderful.
Yeah, and especially in conjunction with those seats we got. We got legless folding seats.
Yeah, and those big aft lockers have also been great. So
Yeah.
that was all your design and your construction, and you really killed it with that, Aladino.
Thank you. No, I'm glad that we liked it. It turned out well.
As a non-skid, we chose to use Kiwi grip. So far, I'm really happy with it. Gives really good traction. Tried a couple of others in the past, and well, the best still is a teak deck. Don't get me wrong. Given the other choices and some others that I've experimented with, I'm really happy with this one. Yeah, the grip is really good. Now we were concerned about dirt. I mean, of course, it kind of goes a little hand in hand. If it grips well, then it also holds dirt. But I don't find it too hard to clean off either.
And here is one of the big components that we were testing this season. I don't know what to say about it, besides that it has outperformed. It works really well. We've had 0 hiccups. Well, it's a Beta 43. Dual alternator setup. I mean, that ties more into the electrical system. We weren't really able to use the alternator to its full performance, but that is because we don't have a proper electrical system yet. Noise level is good, and like there isn't even insulation yet on the top panel, for example, so that's something that we will still work on. Dripless shaft, aqua drive. That's all been really nice. The engine doesn't vibrate much. On idle, we go about 3.5, and 1800 RPM. We easily cruise above 5 knots, if not close to 6 sometimes. Depends on the chop. Comfortable noise, comfortable vibration, but it pushes the boat really good at 4.5, 5 knots, and consumption is low. So really happy with that.
The Galley has been a really functional space, and this is a space that we completely rebuilt. There's basically nothing original in here, and I think that we're really happy with all the choices that we made. Our previous boat did not have an oven. Now we have an oven, so that's really exciting. It's obviously much smaller than like a standard oven in a house. It did take a bit of getting used to. I find it cooks a bit more on the bottom than it does on the top. So I had a few things where the bottom was burnt and the top wasn't cooked, or the inside wasn't cooked. But you know, it just took some getting used to. You have to preheat it really well and make sure there's adequate airflow, and we got there. Moving on, the sink, we got a really big household size sink. I'm so glad that we did. It's worked really well. It just turns this into a really functional galley. The one question that we still have about it is how to drain it properly. A straight out drain is the most effective, but on this boat, the water line is quite high, like the boat sits low in the water. And so the water line basically comes right to the drain, and there's always just a little bit of water in the drain. It's not the end of the world, so we might just leave it like that, or the other options are like having a loop with a pump system to pump out the sink, which comes with a whole host of other issues. So yeah, we're not quite sure yet exactly what we're going to do with that, but I think this straight out system with just a little bit of water, it's just in the drain, it doesn't actually fill the sink itself, might be fine. The fridge, Aladino built the fridge. That was a huge saga. If you've been watching the refit process, then you know. The dilemma with building a fridge is always, if you add more insulation, then you get less volume. And Dean, you added a lot of insulation. I wasn't quite sure during the build process if the balance was being struck correctly, but we have a fridge that now holds its cold for days on end without having to actually turn on the compressor. Yeah, fridge, big A+. I didn't feel too limited by the size of it. Then again, we were not doing massive crossings this summer, so, but I think, you know, maybe adding a freezer if we're going to be going further and less access to grocery stores might be something we look at this winter.
Our fridge is powered by a Technodix Cool Blue compressor and a holding plate, and I have only good things to say about that combo. It's a very powerful unit. It's air cooled. It has really big cooling fins. I was actually surprised because I was thinking of adding some air ventilation to the whole cockpit locker where it's housed. But we didn't get to that, but so far it also didn't seem to need it. Now, if we go out in the Pacific, I'll try to improve airflow, but for now it has just worked flawlessly. It does use very little power, and the way that it works is we have a pretty substantial holding plate inside the fridge. When the compressor turns on, then it freezes the liquid inside of that holding plate, and then it turns into a pretty big chunk of ice. And then the compressor turns off, and that iced over plate holds the heat in our very well insulated fridge. No noise. Just if you really go and listen, then it's like that nice little hum of, yay, it works. The people over at Technodix are a pleasure to work with, incredible customer service. A thing that I really like about these compressors is that they are made by cruisers, for cruisers, so they really know what problems could arise. They make the unit so that it is serviceable. They can jump on the phone with you, help you out. They can send out refill bottles, but those are all things for us that who knows when that will become a thing, but they're important things. Not just here's your unit, goodbye, good luck. Yeah, we really appreciate that.
All right, costume change. This isn't all happening in one day, but let's start with the Blue Eddies. So these are solar generators that we got shortly before leaving. And these are in lieu of a properly installed electrical system because we knew that we weren't going to get around to doing that before launching the boat for the summer season. And so we needed something that would keep up with our relatively high electrical demands because we do have cameras and laptops to charge, and we have the internet that we need to plug in. But we didn't want to spend too much time fussing with it and putting it together. And this has really actually been amazing. We've spent no time fussing with it. It's a basically all-in-one power station box. So it's got a big lithium battery in here. It's also got an inverter. So you can see there's your AC panel. You can plug in AC appliances directly, and it's rated at 2400 watts. So you could literally even run a little AC heater off of this if you want. Although, of course, a heater has very high power demands, so you're definitely gonna drain this pretty quick if you do, but the inverter can keep up with it. Got all these built-in USB slots, USB-C and USB-C-A, USB-A-B. Oh, I don't know. It's got all the USB slots. We have lacked for no USBs of any alphabetical form. And then it's also got like a cigarette plug lighter. And actually, I don't even know what this one is.
RV plug.
RV plug, okay. It also has some solar panels that we've had on the deck of the boat pretty much this whole time. We haven't had them routed very properly. They've been coming in the porthole, but those have actually been surprisingly good at keeping it charged up when there's sun, of course, and that's a big caveat. So when we have several consecutive sunny days, there's no power woes at all. We had two 200-watt solar panels. But on cloudy days, it was sort of a double whammy, because on cloudy, rainy days, not only was there less power being generated, but it also typically meant that we wanted to be inside, and I would be editing videos and using the internet. So then we would go through this pretty quickly. I would usually actually empty this in a day. The reason I would drain it so quickly is because the Starlink did take a lot of power, and that's the next thing I want to talk about. So we just have a normal Starlink system. We have not done the 12-volt conversion. There does appear to be an aftermarket 12-volt conversion, but currently our Starlink just was like the stock, ran off of AC version, and it takes 100 watts, which adds up pretty quick. It did seem to fluctuate. It didn't seem to always be 100 watts, but it was still just like more power than you would want it to be. One thing we want to do this winter is convert that to DC using the aftermarket conversion thing. I think it does void the warranty, but I think it's going to be worth it for us. Everything else about this whole setup worked really well. We have 2 expansion packs with the Bluetti system, so 2 additional lithium boxes essentially, but just without all the inverter and screen and all of that, just to plug in to get additional capacity when we need to, and that's been great. We've been using one of those to run our fridge, actually. I think that about sums it up. We've been really happy, and we're gonna...
No, totally. Exactly. It was perfect for exactly this situation that we had right now. And now that we have time over the winter, we will build the electrical system. Do the opposite, where it's not all contained. We will have batteries going under the quarter berth, inverter going under the chart table, and try to have a more proper electrical system, so to speak. But like for our case, and I can see how handy it is also like for van life or even more. It's a one contained unit with pretty much all you need in there. It's pretty cool. Yeah.
And the downsides to it, I think, are very obvious downsides, right? Like everything that you need to run of it, you need to plug into it. So if you want to have nice lights or something up in the V-berth, you know, now you're routing wires on the floor to this.
Then there's an extension cord, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When we were running the Starlink, there was an extension cord running along the floor to this. So having the built-in system, that's the big benefit of a built-in system. And then obviously a built-in system can just disappear a little easier. This is not a super easy format to just hide away, especially since you need access to the front panel to plug things in all the time. And it's very heavy. It is, you can't just kind of chuck it around. For full transparency, the Bluetti units were donated to us, but they were donated sort of without strings attached, so we can give you a real review. And I think our real review is that they actually exceeded our expectations. Super pleased. And on to the actual design of the saloon. It has been great. The table is something that we were really hesitant about when we first saw the boat, because coming from Magic Carpet 1, we had such a massive table, which was so nice, and this one is very small. And we thought we would want something bigger, but to be honest, I think the benefit of having this fold away so quickly and easily and having all this floor space really is so nice that we're going to stick with this and look at adding some extensions maybe in the future. But yeah, the table stays, I think. It's really not been bad. I also want to mention the thing that we probably missed the most on a day-to-day basis living on the boat this summer was a heater. We had such a long list of things to do, and we had to kind of triage and figure out which ones were the priority. And we thought for a summer sea trial, a heater is very low priority, but it gets cold at night, and we had an unseasonably cold few weeks this summer. So it was definitely missed, and especially one of the other sort of creature comfort problems we had is the portholes over our V-berth have a leak in them. So that's, big on the priority list to fix. It just requires some gasketing and resealing. So we'll get to that. But it kind of sucked because then our mattresses got soaked, but we didn't have a heater or any way to really dry them.
Not much to report from the head, other than it is actually quite spacious in here, works well. The only thing is what doesn't work well, it's because we haven't gotten to it yet. I actually put in the sink and the faucet, but I haven't plumbed them all in yet. So there is no water. The toilet that I'm sitting on instead, that is something that we are using and getting used to. It's an airhead, so it goes in the family of desiccating or composting toilets. The benefits still outweigh the disadvantages for us. It's really nice to have this one contained bucket and no hoses and runs and Y valves and pumps. And there has been no smell, yeah. Sometimes when it's getting full, then you can smell it when you're close to the vent. I was concerned that if you're sitting in the cockpit, that since the wind mostly comes from the bow towards the cockpit, that then you would smell it in the cockpit as well.
Like at anchor, yeah.
Like at anchor, and that's not the case, which is really nice. But when you're right here, like tying up the dinghy and right next to the handrails there, then you do smell it a bit.
Considerably less smell on a daily basis than a normal marine head, in my experience. Yeah. Considerably less. When you open the door to the bathroom, there's really no discernible smell at all, and that is really nice.
Yeah. Big thanks to Scott for helping us with the purchase of the airhead.
Now, up in the V-berth, there actually are a few things that I would like to change, and there's one thing that I wish we would have changed, but now it's sort of too late. So all of these issues are related to condensation, which is, a big topic on boats. Our boat is insulated with balsa, which is not the most incredible insulative material, but it is certainly better than just bare fiberglass. As you might remember if you've watched the whole refit, the balsa insulation in our boat gave us quite a lot of trouble because it was rotten in several sections. And I want to be really careful to make the note here. I always do, but there's still, whenever I don't, there's comments. It is balsa insulated. It is not balsa cord. So the Cape Georges, their hulls are about 1 inch thick fiberglass, and they could exist without any of that balsa. They're completely structurally sound on their own. So when we got the boat, we ended up actually ripping all the walls apart and ripping that rotten sections of balsa out. And at the time, we looked at replacing all of it with foam insulation instead, but that would have represented even more work because then we would have been ripping out the good balsa as well as the bad balsa. And the deciding factor for us at the time was it would have been a lot more money. Looking back, even if we hadn't done it in the whole boat, I do wish we would have done it in the V-berth because we're sleeping here all the time, you're breathing, and this is where you get some more condensation. It is much less than in a typical fiberglass boat. So for example, Magic Carpet 1, we get way less condensation here, but there is still some on the hull.
Overall, I felt really good about the sea trial. Now, of course, I wasn't nervous, but yeah, when you work on so many things, there's just so many questions associated. Will this squeak? Just everything you've worked on, you have a question about it. In the grand scheme, everything that we have done, I am pleased with, and really the things that I have something to add is the things that we haven't done yet. So it's more of a thing of really trying to wrap up the projects that we weren't able to work on yet. But for the most part, what we have done seems to have worked well.
But this winter, there still is a long list. From a creature comfort's point of view, the heater and then sealing the portholes over the V-berth are the biggest priorities. But then we also have to install an entire electrical system, which comes with designing an entire electrical system, running cables, and then things like lights. We didn't have any lights installed on the boat this summer except for the one violin lamp in the galley, which was really useful, but we used the battery-powered lanterns otherwise, which totally worked. But for a sort of longer-term functional home, of course, it would be nice to have some more lighting. We've got a whole plan for that as well, so I think it'll be not just functional, but also quite beautiful. On the exterior of the boat, there's big upgrades to the rig. We might have to bring the mast down one more time just to facilitate installing all the new standing rigging a little bit easier than having to go up and down the mast a million times. Also because the boatyard doesn't love it when you climb the mast when the boat's on the hard. I don't know, we'll see. That still remains to be seen, but that has to happen. New sails so that we can install the roller furlers and also just change the sail design slightly. The hank-on cutter sails that we currently have are very conservative, but if we have roller reefing head sails, then that also will allow us to get slightly bigger sails so that in lighter winds we have a few more options, but we can still reef them fairly easily using the roller reefers. Back to the interior briefly, we are also lacking cabinetry. So in the galley and the head, there's not really any real cabinetry or shelving, so we definitely felt the lack of that a bit this summer, just trying to find places for food and dishes and pots and pans and all the necessities of life. So some of that will get built this winter as well. And then there's just a few finishing items. For example, this little door is just a piece of plywood, which is functional, but it looks bad in our camera shots, so building something nicer for that. The galley floor is still unfinished, it's just subfloor, so there's lots of little finishing details all around the boat to work on as well. So we've got a few months to get this all done. We are staying in an apartment very, very nearby the boatyard for the winter while we do all of this work, but then come the spring, we are moving out of the apartment and cutting ties, and then it really seriously becomes our home. So it has to be functional and beautiful, of course. You know how we work by now. So thank you so much for being here. I know this was a longer episode and a very technical episode, but I know that there's some of you who really enjoy those technical episodes and we're waiting a while to hear the full report card of how Magic Carpet 2 performed this summer. So I hope it was interesting. I'm sure that there's things that we've missed. You know, it was a lot to actually put this together and think of all of the things we've done. So doubtless, there will be some questions. Leave them in the comments. We'll do our best to respond to them. And if there's anything like really big that we missed, then we will try to add it into a future episode as well. All right, thanks so much for being here, everyone. Back to refit period, so a bit of change of pace in the videos again, but this refit period is going to be a little shorter, and then we're going to be back to sailing, and the channel's going to take a turn back to its roots, really. The channel's going to return to kind of what it was when we started it, which was slow and soulful and, as nicely made as I can productions about sailing and adventuring. So that's the goal. That's what we're working to get back to. Huge thanks for being here. Really big thanks to the folks whose names are now appearing on screen for always going above and beyond to make sure that Magic Carpet keeps being produced. We couldn't do it without you. We're truly, truly grateful. Really big thank you to all of our patrons for making this all possible. In exchange, we post real-time weekly updates to Patreon where we walk you through the boat, let you know what's going on, what we are working on at the moment, discuss some real-time quandaries and queries that we're having, which is really, really nice. And then if there's things like meetups or, more real-time things, that's all posted on Patreon. So we're very, very grateful to the audience there. It allows us to remain audience funded. Although we're very, very fortunate to receive donations from companies. We're also very grateful that we are not beholden to any companies to actually, sit down and read you one of their ads. And that's directly because of audience support through Patreon. So thank you. All right. Thanks everyone for being here. We'll see you all next Friday. I think we're going to start right away with installing a heater, because that is really what we were missing. So I'm looking forward to that. Bye, everyone.